Good early afternoon to everybody on East Coast time. Good morning to the rest of you. I do appreciate the opportunity, and I won't take long here to introduce myself. I want to say hi first to Leslie, Julie Tusek, and Jamie Rosen. Good to have all of you on the call this morning. Just very brief background. I'm a director at Catalyst CPA Marketing. We are a marketing public relations firm that really specializes in supporting the marketing staff and business development staff of leading local and regional CPA firms. We're focused exclusively on the accounting firm market and work with firms ranging in size from top 30 firms down to smaller local firms. So we're very flexible in what we do and really just seek to support and enhance what internal people in those firms are able to do. I do appreciate Deborah providing me this opportunity this morning. I'm excited to talk a little bit about infographics. I don't know if any of you have had experience using infographics in your media campaigns, your marketing campaigns, or in your business development efforts. But to me, it's an exciting new way, not necessarily new, but an exciting way to communicate that really we'll talk about a little bit today has a real nice natural fit potentially with accounting marketing. From my perspective, we are just now in the last probably 6 months to a year starting to get more and more requests to help firms utilize infographics, whether it's in social media campaigns or in face-to-face sales processes with accounting firms. And in finding out the ways that it can work is something that we'll discuss here today, and I'll share what we've seen work, and then any of you certainly, as I'm talking, if you have any feedback, any questions, just interrupt me. That's what everybody around my office does anyway, so just jump in. If you have any ideas or any questions, and I'll certainly, we can talk and talk about those. Agenda for today, we'll very briefly talk about objectives 1 and 2, which is just kind of the basics of to get everybody up to speed on what infographics are, exactly what we're talking about, make sure we're all using the same definition of infographics. Number 2, second objective, how and why are infographics used for marketing? Certainly infographics are used for areas outside of marketing, but more and more they're being used as a marketing tool in the digital and social space, and you're also seeing the infographics bringing value and being useful in the print space as well. We'll spend most of our time today, hopefully, on objectives 3 and 4, which are really talking about infographics and accounting marketing. Where are the fits? Where can infographics be useful? I'll move back and forth between marketing, branding, name recognition type things, and also we'll talk a little bit about how they could be useful in business development as well, because as you all know, that's where the rubber really hits the road, and bringing value to that business development and client acquisition process is what's really important a lot of times to management within your firms. Finally, we'll talk about creating and integrating infographics into your content marketing and other programs. Creating infographics is something we'll talk about, ways that you can create meaningful, powerful infographics, and different ways you can approach that depending on what type of internal resources that you have. So those are the areas that I want to hit today, and then at the end, if we have time left, certainly I'll answer any questions that anybody has. First, very basic, what are infographics? How long have they been used? What are the trends contributing to their rise in numbers? What are those trends, and how much traction are they gaining? And then, can they be effective as a marketing tool? Any of you could have gone out online and kind of pulled in different definitions of infographics. Certainly that was the part of my process in putting this together, but pulling together the definitions that I thought were the most meaningful and broad enough that really could describe how they could be used in an accounting firm setting. Infographics in general are just visual representations of information, in most cases intended to convey complex information quickly and clearly while eliciting a reaction. To me, if you look at just this definition of infographics, you can already see very quickly how this could be useful in marketing accounting services, whether it's tax or audit or specialized services that you may have. Again, a lot of times with accountants, when we're trying to sell services or we're trying to explain services to existing clients or new prospects, we're talking about data-driven, a lot of times complex information for those that don't work in the accounting field, and we're trying to get that narrowed down to, the simplest meaning that's going to have meaning to our client or whoever we're talking to, and it's going to make them understand the value in the service or the opportunity that we're talking about. Probably within your firms, you know that there's certain people that already do that very, very well face-to-face, but a lot of times the challenge is doing that, conveying that same type of value from complex information when you don't have those individuals there. Another point about infographics is they're often based on data, but they don't have to be based on data. And I'll show you some examples later of some very simple things that we've done for some firms that are really not data-driven, but just providing information, basic information in a way that's more visually appealing and is going to have more of an impact on the audience. According to Francesco Franchi, infographics are a narrative language. They're a representation plus an interpretation to develop an idea. Now, if any of you are wondering who Francesco Franchi is, I am as well. I don't have any idea who that is. I did find a picture of him, but I like his definition of what a good infographic was. I think he's foreign, too, so that probably lends significant credibility to whatever he said.
I actually went to college with her.
He or she, I don't even, whoever he or she is, great definition on what a great infographic is. So why are infographics so effective? And for those of you that don't like words as much, we'll get to some pictures here shortly, which is really what the point of all this is about anyway. So in the next couple slides, we'll start to look at some infographics and talk about what they do. Why are they so effective? In general, they're being used more and more. Probably the first place they were used significantly was in news and media. In recent years, you've seen a lot of very powerful infographics in the political realm, in the marketing realm as well. I'm sure a lot of you can remember, and there's probably 20 different ones out there illustrating kind of the national debt of the country, in stacks of $10,000. I think there's probably 15 or 20 of those that are floating around that really, again, is taking something that's a complex idea because no one can really visualize $16 trillion. But allowing someone to visualize a complex idea like that the human brain doesn't naturally know how to visualize that is a really good illustration of what infographics do and how they can convey meaning that just looking at the raw data a lot of times, a viewer's not going to get. What does it mean for CPAs? I mean, that's the real question I think that we want to get to today. And it's going to come down to figuring out, what's the data that we want to convey meaning from, and then how can you use this tool that's available to do that. As far as why they're effective, there's some trends that are really affecting why infographics are becoming used more and more, and why they're so effective in connecting and leaving a lasting impression with a reader. First, the average attention span, according to a study conducted in 2012, and this was an online study based primarily on how long people were staying on specific pages, but the average attention span has dropped 33% in the past 12 years. What that means is you have less and less time to make an impression on someone and get an idea through to them and keep their attention. So again, that kind of points towards a move away from paragraph or text descriptions of what we're talking about and towards something that's more and more illustrative, that's going to take advantage of that very short time frame you have to grab someone's attention and get some meaning to them. Additionally, reading, unfortunately, is drastically decreasing across the board in the United States. And that's not just people sitting down and reading entire books. That's the amount of time people are spending reading paragraph copy or text on web pages. There's carryover from that to how long people are going to spend looking at printed collateral material or leave-behind material that you may have. Again, with the digital era that we're in, with people moving back and forth between their mobile devices and their computers and their television, a lot of people have 3 or 4 things going on all the time at once. That drop in attention span and that drop in time spent on any one thing really precipitates a change in how we market and how we present concepts to consumers. And probably within the accounting realm, it's probably a little bit slower as far as who your ideal clients are. I mean, if you're a firm that works with business owners and high net worth clients, they probably have a longer attention span. But again, this cultural change and this change in the way that people are consuming information is certainly creeping and will be ever more so creeping into how your clients and how your ideal prospects are consuming information. As a marketer or as someone in business development, you have a very limited amount of time to catch someone's attention and engage them. And again, when we're dealing with complex information that outside of our offices, obviously within your office, everybody's fascinated by the tax code, and there's probably a couple copies of the Master's Appreciation Guide sitting on one of your desks right now. But outside of our offices, the interest level in tax and accounting and the concepts that get our people excited is not the same. You know, people are interested in the results, they're interested in the value, and interested in what the impact is to their business and their family. The quicker we can get to that, you know, and away from the mundane, what they consider the mundane details of it, the better off we're going to be as far as conveying ideas. Skipping down, accountants, by extension accounting marketers, you must create urgency and compel action from information, data, and statistics. This is really, when you go out and talk to someone, I mean, you're trying to make a connection. If we're talking about selling a specific service or an idea, you've got to convince them that the idea is good and worthwhile, or the action or the behavior is good and worthwhile for their person, their family, or their business. And finally, and unfortunately, outside of the accounting industry, a lot of people just aren't as into numbers as we are. Numbers are boring. It's kind of like I think Homer Simpson used to talk about shiny things. You know, anything that was shiny got his attention, and that's really where consumers, and that's really where the media has taken us, in that people are used to consuming in this way, and we need to change how we market to start delivering ideas the way that people are used to consuming them. So quickly, how are infographics used in marketing? You know, probably the origin was the first place that infographics were used heavily was in news, followed quickly by politics, and now marketing is one of the biggest areas of use for infographics. You can't go on Facebook or Pinterest on a day and not find some kind of infographic promoting something, trying to give you some information that makes you think about a specific idea and tries to get you to come up with some kind of an action. Marketing really is a little bit more of a challenge than news or politics, because in news, all you're trying to do is take some information and really disseminate it down to something that's consumable. Marketing, you really need to go one step further, and then not only do we need to convey meaning, but we want to compel some sort of action or reaction from the reader. So that's really the challenge in taking this type of medium and taking it from what has traditionally been used and taking it to marketing. So we've got to not only organize information, present information in a clear and concise way, but we need them to draw a conclusion that leads to an action in most cases. So we'll get to that when we really start talking about how you can use it within your firm. Infographics, again, allow for quick, lasting, and meaningful consumption. Some of the things to consider here is if you're doing much in the social space, infographics are very, very shareable. People very often, you know, will repost, will share, will forward these types of things if they find them interesting, much more so than they'll forward an article, much more so than they'll forward just a blog post with no imagery, no infographic associated with it. So if you are involved a lot in that space and you're doing much marketing in that area, these can be very, very valuable. One thing to consider there is actually within the accounting space, the AICPA has put out quite a few quality infographics. And when you're talking about social, a lot of times creating an infographic internally just for the purposes of getting some brand recognition socially and getting your name out there, that, you know, might not be the best use of your time, the best use of your time and resources, depending on how quickly you can put together something that's valuable. But there's nothing wrong with, you know, and a lot of what social is sharing other good ideas. And if you look at what the AICPA has done, I think I have a link to it later here in the presentation, you know, those types of things may be worth commenting on briefly, whether it's in a blog post, commenting on the content, giving commentary, your point of view in a blog post, or doing that on Facebook or Twitter and pointing someone to that. Again, that's going to get shared and reshared, and that's going to take your name if you're the one that posted it along with it. Infographics are much more likely to go viral. Again, viral marketing for an accounting firm, not probably the holy grail, but it does, if you do have these things and you are active and you are utilizing them, again, you're going to get just more visibility in the social space than you are, with more traditional types of content. I think something that most of what you're going to read online about infographics is going to be talking about that social space. It's going to be talking about online attention. It's going to be talking about websites and blogs. What we're seeing more of and what we're working on with a couple of firms is using infographics in the actual face-to-face point-of-sale process to convey, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but to take some things that are hard to convey value and meaning because we're talking about numbers, we're talking about sometimes tax, and making those simple, easy to consume, not only easy for your potential buyers, your customers, your clients to consume and understand, but also easier for your professionals to share. One of the things that most firms struggle with is you'll have maybe 3 or 4 really good business developers that are really just really good relational people and storytellers in your firm, and other people that struggle a lot more and tend to fall back on the technical and have more difficulty relating and sharing value and showing value. So again, there's potential use for infographics to explain tax incentives, for an example. There's a lot more use than just the social space and just the digital space. So now this is the part that's really I wanted to focus on today, which are infographics and marketing your firm. I'm going to share with you, again, like I said, this has probably been the last 6-12 months that we've really been doing more and more work in this area, so I want to share with you some examples of what we've done. I'll walk you through our thought process when we're going to create an infographic, exactly how that thought process works to go from concept to completion, and then we'll close the presentation with just showing you some of the tools that you can use to build your own infographics and then incorporate them into your sales and marketing efforts. So we know now kind of what infographics are, what they're used for, and why they could bring value. They could potentially be a really good fit based on what they do and what the needs are within the marketing and business development realm. But I guess the question then becomes, where do you start, and how can you ensure that bringing value, the value that you bring justifies, the time and expense in developing it? And that's the real question, is picking your spots, making sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time, and you're providing tools that are really going to bring value. Some of the common challenges that you face as an accountant, a CPA, or someone in the marketing team at an accounting firm when it comes to marketing are very much answered by and a solution is provided by infographics. And I kind of made a list of some of the common challenges that we hear and then some of the benefits that infographics could potentially provide if used correctly within your marketing program. One is that we deal with a lot of data-driven information. Whether it's tax information or if you have a specific industry niche. I have a couple of clients that we're working on some reports now, some industry reports, healthcare reports, where they do surveys, and we're looking at a better way to present the information than they traditionally have. And infographics are going to play a big part in that. So again, data-driven information, which is very difficult a lot of times for people to consume and get the right meaning from. Infographics can potentially solve that problem. Again, we talked about limited attention window. Infographics increase the captive audience. Complex concepts. We're able to, and this isn't just infographics that do this. There needs to be significant creativity involved, and it's going to rely on you to take those complex concepts and manage to simplify them and convey the key points. I think and what a lot of you probably experience within your own firms, when you're talking to practitioners, a lot of the problems some of them have is that they have a hard time taking the complex and going to the simple. They deal in the complex realm. They deal with the specifics. And when they're talking about their service, or they're talking about an opportunity, or they're talking about something that their clients need to look at, a lot of times they'll have trouble going from the low level, from the details, from being in the muck with everything they're dealing with, to really distilling it down to the most important points. And infographics can certainly, one of the primary uses of them is to do exactly that. Next, not everyone, even business owners, likes to deal with numbers. You give them a spreadsheet or a chart, and they're not going to look at it. They're not going to take much time on it. They're naturally going to bounce right over that to something else. Everybody likes pictures. far as I can tell. There's not too many people that don't like pictures, illustrations. You're going to get through to a much larger audience using an infographic as opposed to more traditional. Delivery and reach, again, this goes more into the social media area. You're going to reach more people. These are going to be shared more often. They're going to go potentially viral as much as an accounting marketing thing can go viral. But they're going to provide viral opportunity. Decreased interest in financial content. People are spending less time reading details of financial content. I had a study I looked up on that. It's not a huge decrease, but it's a slow trend. But what's interesting is, and I've got a graph on this later that we'll look at, is finance and money-based infographics are one of the largest categories of most viewed and most created infographics, and they're the fastest growing. So while there's decreased interest in maybe in detailed, financial reading, that doesn't mean there's decreased interest in that area. It's just, again, I think that's a symptom of people's attention spans decreasing, and something that maybe, where that could potentially affect your ability to grab people's attention. You can kind of reverse that and get them back with the correct infographics. And finally, very simply, we're starting to use them for very simple things, for differentiation, just to look a little bit sharper, to look a little bit more progressive. And when I start talking about how you can use these, we'll start on the most basic level of how you can create a very simple infographic and how you can use it. Here's the simplest thing that I've seen firms do, and that is simply, and we'll start very, very simply, spice up very basic information. And I got 4 examples here of how you can spice up very basic information and really just create a better look, a better feel, a better brand to something that you're showing clients and prospects. Whether it's on the website or in a proposal, more and more firms are going to infographic descriptions of their firm. And these can be very, very simple, and the only purpose can be simply to make sure they're going to read that information. If you have specialties in an area, if you have niche specialties, you may want to, in your proposal, demonstrate the breadth of your expertise, your professional's expertise in those areas. Talk about the number of clients you work with, the number of states you work in, the number of clients you may have within that niche. How many professionals do you have in that niche? You could put your affiliations, the associations you're involved with. Again, this is a lot of information that's already going to be in your proposal almost every time when you're dealing with a proposal in a specific niche. But if you're putting that in traditional paragraph form, a lot of times, even though that you're thinking of that, your experience, your expertise in those areas, that's a big differentiator for you. The problem is a lot of times that's not getting read. And if you can put that in something visual that's going to grab the reader's attention, is going to stick with them, you're going to get a lot more value from that differentiator that you have within your firm. It's going to stick out a lot more. So client and industry profiles, who do you work with? How do you demonstrate your expertise within a niche? These things are things that can all be done very well visually. Staff and experience. And something that's a growing trend that I've seen more and more of are actually, I call them info bios, which is taking a bio and making it in infographic format. Again, you're trying to do the exact same thing in that you're trying to convey experience, expertise, depth of knowledge, the clients you work with. You're trying to do those things in a way that people are actually going to read. And again, the problem is less and less people are reading through the detailed CVs and bios and those types of things. So info bios are something that is something new. I've seen more and more people going to them, not so much in the accounting industry yet, but I think there's potential there. Here's a real quick, again, simple infographic for a firm that operates in the specialty tax area, and they compete with larger firms. The purpose of this was simply to kind of let people know that though they're a smaller firm, they do a lot of work in this area. They work with a lot of CPA firms, and by working with them, you're not working with someone who has less experience. So again, a lot of infographics you'll see are showing maps of the United States, maps of the world. The more you look at infographics, the more you consume them, the more you'll be able to visualize ways to display your information. And to me, there's really no better way to get yourself to a point where you can visualize and you can concept a graphic idea of what you're trying to convey than to look at what else is out there. You know, there's a lot of great ideas out there, and there's a lot of things you can learn from looking at how other people are using these to convey the messages that they have. And I think that's really a starting point, is looking at what's out there, looking at what's been done, looking at how other people are telling a story, and getting ideas from that. This is an AI CPA infographic right here. I think we can actually click on this and see it larger. This is actually an infographic just trying to get people to invest at a younger age. So again, they're trying to show the importance of investing. And if you have a financial planning division, you know, something like that, where you're sitting down and talking to people about the importance of investment planning, you're sitting down with younger clients at the accounting firm and trying to talk to them about that. These types of things can be useful. These types of things, these AI CPA infographics can also be useful for social shares, just pushing those out there. They've done quite a few things in association with the Ad Council. So again, they're trying to promote a certain type of behavior. This one kind of shows, you know, when do you start investing? You know, how much does savings mean? And this one actually breaks it down to, you know, what you're paying for your phone bill. What does what you're paying for your phone bill every month mean in terms of your retirement? Well, that's hard for that's a hard thing for people to understand, and that's the point of this infographic right here, is to show how savings equates to value, you know, multiple years down the line. And I think, again, we're looking at now with cost segregation and some other things that also deal with time value of money, looking at how do we demonstrate these and explain that concept through the use of infographics. Estate planning can be another one. I think would be a great opportunity to use some infographics in your estate planning. Tax planning. Again, a lot of times you're throwing a lot of different concepts at people. And this isn't even in the digital space. This could be done point of sale when your professionals are out speaking with clients, trying to encourage them to engage in specific activities that you know, that your professionals know are going to bring value to them. Infographics are a great way. It could be a great help to your people face-to-face to help them convey that. For a lot of times, you know, other than like we talked about those great business development people, it can be a struggle sometimes for technicians to really convey concepts and value in a way that really resonates with their clients and prospects. So investment, if you have investment planning or investment group associated with your firm, tax planning I think would be a great opportunity, especially when we talk about potentially tax incentives, explaining what those do, whether it's, you know, international tax incentives or depreciation-based incentives, really letting them know what that means to their bottom line. And estate planning I think would be a great opportunity as well. Another area to think about, and I know some of you are with some larger firms here that probably do some surveys and have some niche publications that you put out. You know, how you're putting that information out is certainly worth taking a look at. Because again, if you're putting it out in data form, while your people may be able to read it and get the value from it quickly, I think you can make an assumption that you're not hitting as many people and getting the right message across. We're working on an actual dental survey for a client now. They survey about 200 dentists across their state and had been sending it out in Excel format every year. And we're starting to work now on putting something together that's going to include infographics that may look a lot like what you're looking at here. How do we take this information? And the starting point for us is, what do we want them to know? What do we want them to get from the information that's going to allow us to introduce our solution? And that's the starting point with a lot of these, is what's the most meaningful information and how does it introduce or encourage them to look at, you know, the solutions that we have and the consulting services that you may have. Viral content, again, I talked about this before, and this is a little bit of an area that I would caution you on in the sharing and resharing, because again, a lot of it is a little bit political in what people really like and what's really interesting. And I think as a marketer, you've got to be very careful when you're looking at content like this to make sure that it's not construed as taking a political angle that your firm's not gonna be comfortable with. Again, it's great stuff for resharing. It's great to look at the content. You're going to get a lot of visibility from resharing it. But I think the one thing I would caution you on is simply be careful from the political aspect of it, because a lot of these, the most popular ones, are popular because there is, you know, some kind of political statement built into them. So Again, I would definitely look at those as an opportunity to reshare, but I would be very careful when doing so to consider whether they're taking a political side that your firm wouldn't want to take a stand on as a firm. Last section here, going quickly here because I know you guys have about an hour scheduled for the call in general. I want to talk about creating and using infographics. I know Deborah said one of the things she wanted to talk about was how does a firm create an infographic? What's the process? What are the tools that are used? And how might that vary depending on what resources you have internally? Design resources, marketing resources. How's that going to vary based on how you're staffed internally at your firm? Here's our process for creating infographics. We always start with defining objectives. I never recommend anyone, do something just for the sake of making something that looks nice. So always start off with why are we creating this? What is the intended value? What are we going to use it in? What's the application we're going to use it in? Next, we go to analyze. Okay, you defined your objectives. Now we're going to look at what kind of data or information we have. So we're going to analyze the data, try to figure out, what are we looking at and what are we trying to convey? What are we trying to explain? Next step is visualize. And this is the hardest step, visualizing. That's going to cause the biggest challenge, is taking that from the data to visualizing. Finally, create and promote. I'm using create to just talk about the actual creation. How are we actually taking our visualized concept and making that something real and tangible. And then promotion is how we're going to use it in our business development process. So first, with defining objectives, at the outset, if you think you have an opportunity where you think an infographic might bring some value, start by talking about what you want to accomplish. I mean, from something as simple as conveying niche expertise, we want to show how many hospitals we work with. We want to show how many. We have 2 MDs on staff in our healthcare consulting practice. We've worked in these number of different areas. That's a great starting point for an infographic when you're trying to convey specific niche expertise or competency. So that would be, at the outset, a very good thing to start off with and say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is how we're going to use the information, and think about where you're going to use it to. Is it something that's going to be used online? Is it something you're going to be used socially? You're going to have this printed leave behind? Is this going to be something that's a sales tool for your professionals as they go out to find prospects? So think about how the infographic is going to work within your marketing and specific business development initiatives. And what's it going to take the place of? Make sure how is it going to do a better job than what we have. And a lot of times it's look at the areas that that your people, your professionals, or as a firm, you have a hard time communicating value. And those are good opportunities. You have a hard time communicating value in an area that should be a differentiator. That could be a great opportunity for an infographic to show that information and really get that point across. We always try to define the desired conclusion of the reader. What are we trying to get the reader to get out of it? That way, when we're done with our infographic, we can show it to someone who doesn't know anything about what we've been doing and get feedback from them on what did this leave you with? What did you take from this? And that'll help you determine, do you have a good design? Is your design accomplishing what you wanted it to accomplish? Next is the fun part, and this depends on what you're looking at. Analyzing the information. If you're looking at a lot of industry data, this can be a real task to dig through this and to figure out what's the meaningful part and what's going to show. If we're talking about a bio-type stuff or niche expertise, something along those areas, that's pretty simple. You can look at the information and you can figure out what the differentiators are, and that's what we want to get into the infographic. Find the message in the data. If we're working with data or working with information, either one, find the message in the data that you want conveyed. This is the story. This is what you want the information to tell someone. So you're looking for the story from the data, and your job then is to graphically tell that story with that information. This is the hardest part, and probably where the most value comes, is visualizing a concept. And this, along with the next one, creating your infographic, I separate them because to me, most of the value, if you can visualize the concept, no matter how bad you are at drawing or whatever it is, if you can visualize the concept, you know what information you want conveyed and roughly how to do it, you can get the actual graphic design done, whether it's hiring someone outside or someone internally. That's not expensive and it's not hard to do. What's hard to do is to have somebody, you've got to understand the topic, the information, the services you guys are, or actions you guys are trying to promote. Visualizing the concept, this is where the real value is. Creativity is essential. If you know who internally you have there who has some creativity, pick their brain on this type of stuff. You might be the creative person in your office. I'm not in my office. I've got other people that are much better at that. So use whatever creative resources you have, because that's going to be a big part of being able to accomplish what you're trying to do. Don't be afraid to borrow ideas from others. Again, it's a lot easier to see an infographic and think, hey, this is how our information could fit into that. We could do something very, very similar with what we're trying to do. If you have a starting point and an idea, it's going to get you there a lot faster than starting from scratch. So don't be afraid to look through, and I have a link later on that kind of shows it's got entire catalogs of infographics in different areas. You can go through those, you can look at what other people have done, and you can get inspiration for what you're trying to do. Visualize the information in segments and components. Again, if you look at infographics, there's always maybe 7 or 8 different components. Some of them are longer train of thought infographics that take you through a thought process. If that's the case, you need to visualize the thought process that you want someone to go through and then attach the information to that process. That's the last point there. Is there required chain of consciousness? An important thing to ask. And those are the much more difficult and time-intensive and require more creativity. If you're trying to walk someone through data to a conclusion, that's a tricky thing to do. Some of the stuff we talked about earlier is a lot easier, where we're talking about specific points of data that are going to go together to kind of show, what we have in that area, how our firm is equipped in that area. But if you're trying to walk someone through a chain of consciousness where they're trying to figure out, from data or from information where the value is, you're trying to demonstrate value, again, you need to kind of walk yourself through that before you get started actually drawing something up. Here are some tools that are available. If you're a designer or you have a designer internally, we do quite a bit of this. Is we just use Illustrator, InDesign, whatever it may be to create the infographic. Again, you need design skills to do that, and you need the software. Conversely, if you do the concepting yourself, again, actually, graphic design is not very expensive. It's only expensive if you're not coming up, you're not bringing the concepting. The value is in the concepting. So if you have a great concept, you know how you're going to use it, you know how it's going to bring value, and you're just hiring someone to execute, someone that has skills within, CS5 or CS6, that has the creative suite and they can do it, that's not going to cost you very much. And in some cases, that's a good way to do things if you have the creativity but not the skills to execute. If you don't have anyone on your staff, anyone ever accused of being a designer, and you don't have access to these things, there's some other things you can do. Like I said before, you can hire a designer. There's different ways to do that. Like I said, you can do all the concepting internally, and that's going to be an inexpensive process if you manage it correctly. If you want help from the concepting point, how do we even do this? That's kind of in the consulting area. You want somebody to help you start to finish, figure out where are we going to use infographics, how are they going to help us, how am I going to sell this to our partner group, how are we going to incorporate it into our media strategy and our business development strategy. That's a lot of what we do for our clients is start to finish. We're trying to not just execute things for them, but make sure that we're bringing value and that they know what the value is and that it's gonna work within the processes that they have. 3 other things that are very, very popular. If you're not a designer, picto chart, easily and visually. These are online tools where you start with templates, you start with pre-made shapes and graphs and maps, and you can put your own infographics together. Again, what they do is you don't have to design anything. You're picking and choosing, and you're adding data to existing. Obviously, this is going to limit you a little bit more because they can't have pre-designed everything that you could ever want. But I would encourage encourage you to look at those. We've had some clients that have put together some really nice looking things through using these tools internally without any design skills. So those are the three biggest ones that I would encourage you if you want to try to take this on your own, or you just want to look through some examples. Some of these have some really good examples of infograms that could give you some ideas both on design and use within your practice. I already kind of hit on this, other people's infographics. I try to do this a lot with blog posts with what we do, whether it's an infographic that I think is really, really interesting. There's a lot of infographics for marketing, so it's not really hard for me to find one and then comment on it. We do a lot of that with video as well, so that all of our blog posts that come from our staff here aren't just, 3 paragraphs that don't jump off the paper or don't jump off the screen. So using infographics as an accompanying picture as a starting point for conversation on something that you'd like to discuss. Again, social shares, sharing other people. Again, I talked about this before. The only thing I would caution you on is to be careful with the political realm or anything that could be viewed, that could offend one of your clients, or they could think is you're taking a position that they don't agree with. But again, social sharing of infographics is in general a very good way to get some visibility and some distance from your social activities. Last thing I have here are 3 resources that I wanted to leave your group with. And again, after this, actually we've already put it out on the Dropbox folder, so you'll be able to go and get this, and you'll be able to follow any of these links that you want. So you don't have to worry about writing down the names of the resources or going to figure out where these are. These are all hyperlinks, so I'd encourage any of you to go after we're done here and look at these resources, explore the options that you have for creating your own infographics and how you can do that without design skills. Those are the best ones that we've found, and we've been researching those and looking at those for the past year or so. So those are the best ones. Could save you some time looking for good tools to use. That's all I have for the day. I want to open it up to any questions that any of you have. If you have ideas, you want to walk through any ideas that you have on how you could use infographics or experience we have, certainly let me know, and I'd be happy to answer as best I can.